Lucky you!
Best 36 holes in golf.
You tuned in to Alternate Shots Podcast,
Marnie's Army.
where we talk about golf,
to sing
Marquis,
Maryland,
Sandys.
my
Poker.
Maryland.
Bond. James Bond.
horse racing,
I'm all in.
great movies.
Alfred Hitchcock.
We have no script.
And down the stretch they come.
We're glad you joined us.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Whoop. Let's start again. All right, Billy, we're back after a prosperous, or maybe not for some prosperous week, because we are talking about two dopes doping out wire to wire. What are we wire to wiring? Which events?
Both of them. Both of those jewels, one of the Grand Slam and one of the horse racing's Triple Crown, were taken by the guys who jumped right out in front and stayed there. They never looked back. Shoffley was a bit of a surprise because he normally does look back, so it was good to see him hold his lead.
It was a really interesting weekend, and as wet as you can see on the
Preakness, yeah, the Pimlico
Preakness.
racetrack. Yep.
it was a mutter, and it nullified some of the stuff that we were thinking about speed horses and come from behind horses and stretch runners and all that. Well, let's talk about the Preakness first, and then we'll get to the 2024 Preakness first, and let's talk about the 2024 PGA second, because there were certainly a lot of storylines in there. And maybe I will just tease you by, who do you think Rory McIlroy is dating? We'll get to that later. So let's take a look at this this first clip here.
His 40th Triple Crown race. So Larry Comas with the call of the Preakness. Larry.
Mystic Dan has moved into line. Here's Imagination and Frankie Dettori.
There's our imagination.
They're in. They're all in line.
Yeah, imagination's the reason the race turned out the way it did.
In the Preakness, Mystic Dan came out very well. So to Imagination, sees the gray, goes up in between horses, and Brian Hernandez is going to take back on Mystic Dan as Sees the Gray takes the early lead. Imagination on the outside is second. These two to set
The Imagination never got the lead and never tried to get inside.
Then catching freedom.
Can't believe he was just outrun. I just think he either wasn't good enough or the jockey wasn't good enough.
Was 24.04 seconds.
That's all you need to know, Billy, right there.
That's it. Nobody was passing anybody in the stretch most of the day there. And Wayne Lucas, who's been in this game since Plato, I think he's 88 years old, and he's got a boatload of wins. I think this might have been his 15th or 16th Triple Crown race win. They call him the coach. He used to be the villain by racing fans because he beat Genuine Risk way back when, the filly and the Preakness with Angel Cordero rough riding, and everybody saying, how could you do that? But now he's back on top. Everybody loves him. The venerable Wayne Lucas, God bless him, 88 years old, at the track and watching his horse win the Preakness wire to wire.
A lot of storylines in this race. Maybe who's the speed is going to win. You had when we did our last podcast, you had two entries by Baffert. Ooh, you had Baffert in there. We'll have to throw a picture up of him there, and he was coming in with two, as you say, speed balls.
Yep. And one of them scratched. They spiked a fever after he shipped in. I think there was maybe trouble with one of his legs. Who knows? But again, Baffert works his horses very hard, so perhaps the horse was overworked. Who knows? But at any rate, Muth, who was supposed to be the favorite, was declared a scratch, and that left the speed. I thought Imagination was going to outrun Muth anyway in the beginning, but Imagination just didn't run. He didn't fire, he wasn't ready. Something was wrong there because he should never have given up that lead so easily.
And that's Imagination on the left, the jockey in the yellow cap. And that's
very wide. Yeah.
That's as close as anybody got to Seize the Gray. Seize the Gray.
Yeah, Mystic Dan and Catching Freedom were closing pretty well, especially considering the track bias that day, but they never got close. There was nobody catching Seize the Gray.
All those combinations and superfectas and trifecta boxes can be spoiled by just one horse, as we know.
So, it's always true. Always.
But I think Muth scratching might not have been a big deal. You will come back, think of this. Victor Hovland was thinking of scratching just before the week of the PGA. He didn't know if he wanted to play in it. We'll come back to that in the PGA, but Muth might not have made a difference because of this wet track, and it looked like at this point in the first quarter, first half, 3/4 of a mile, Imagination was going to be ahead of everybody based upon our research. But Muth might not have gotten past Mugaboo or
Yeah, you
Uncle
never know.
Heavy.
But I guess D. Wayne had his finger on the pulse before the race. He was saying, the mud changes everything, and he wasn't sure how his horses would react to it, and he wasn't sure how the other horses would react to it. Mystic Dan had showed some had a win in the slop, so he had some past performances that could be applied, but it didn't do him any good against Seize the Gray, who apparently does like the mud, certainly likes the lead. And I think that, some people used to say on a rainy day, always bet the gray. There you have it.
Well, since we don't want to tease our audience, and I'll edit this out, let's just make sure and watch the rest of the race and then stop it there.
Mystic Dan bearing down on the outside. Seize the Gray won't go away. Mystic Dan catching freedom, moving down the center of the track. But Wade Lucas has got it. Seize the Gray wins the Preakness. Oh.
He was actually pulling away from those horses at the end.
It's unbelievable. And to run a big time race like this, from the moment you're put into your 6th spot or your 6th hole, the racing gate, to the end, it was an exciting race. But I got to believe the mud. The mud here changed perhaps the outcome that might have been if it was a dry track. Or I'm a rookie. I don't know. We're reading the red.
It absolutely is possible. It usually does change the outcome. I mean, there's no way of knowing if the horse would have run that well on a fast track, but it's pretty good guess that the mud certainly affected the race. I mean, these horses that were behind him were getting mud kicked in their face the whole way around. Some of them don't like that.
Any thoughts here? Do you see this horse racing in the Belmont?
Lucas will probably take a shot because that's what he does. And the race is only 1.25 miles. 1.5 miles, everybody's thought process would be different if the Belmont was at 1.5 miles this year, but it's not. It's 1.25 miles. And I think we'll have a third different winner. Maybe Mystic Dan will win up there. I don't know. Maybe Catching Freedom will probably get, his feet under him. He keeps looking like he's going to do something, but I think maybe a newcomer shows up.
If Mystic Dan,
wait and see.
This is all hypothetical, but if in this race Mystic Dan had another 1/4 mile, would you have seen him win this race?
I don't think so. Not on that track the way it was playing. It looked like at the end, as both Mystic Dan and Catching Freedom looked like they were gaining on Seize the Gray, and then all of a sudden Seize the Gray started to pull away again. So I think they could have gone around again and they wouldn't have caught him under those conditions. Maybe on a fast track, but again, if maybes don't pay you anything when you go to the window.
Well, we got a true winner here. No question about this horse dominating wire to wire. Let's shift our chat here to the PGA. We're going from wire to wire on the track at the Preakness, My Maryland, I love that song, to back to racing country, to Louisville. And what do we got in Louisville? But we got mud ball. We got Louisville. It rained the week before at Valhalla. It rained on Monday and it rained overnight Thursday. They were not playing lift, clean, and place, which I find great. I like to see the mud ball, but
absolutely,
you have so many stories. Sorry, you have so many storylines at this 2024 PGA. What'd you say about the under par?
Look at all the scores and how far under par they were, mud or no mud. So these guys adapt to their, they're going to get a bad break every now and then, whether it's mud or a bad bounce or, who knows. But they all were up to the task. Mud
Well,
on the right, the ball goes left. Mud on the left, the ball goes right. They had to take it in under consideration when their ball had mud on it, and they did. And for the most part, they were successful at it. You know, as the commercial used to say, these guys are good.
yeah. Well, a lot of them had mud on their workout sneakers on Friday because of the foul up. Now, I know a little something about down there. There's a 4-lane road there that you had to access to get into Valhalla. But they set it up as one lane going one way and one lane going another lane, and the middle lane was for buses and for badged cars like specific SUVs and whatnot. There is no crosswalks. No crosswalk. So can you
Yep.
imagine crossing the Boston Post Road from Mamaroneck through Larchmont and bumper to bumper? But this place started out very hot. First, Monday, what do we hear? Rory McIlroy files for divorce. Interesting.
Yeah. He doesn't seem it didn't seem to affect him that much. He was still bopping around like nothing was going on.
Well, he won the
But
week before, and those papers had to be ready to
yeah,
go into wherever you bring them in on Monday, the Monday of the PGA. So that was on his head, and he won pretty good the week before. It's amazing how they can
I'd hate to think it was a
compartmentalize.
financial decision for him to lose.
Well,
You're
the,
not getting half of this purse.
no, and then you see this PGA was overshadowed by a really bigger story. Mr. Mills losing his life, to
Yeah,
me,
that
is
was
the biggest
horrible.
bad story of all of this when you look at it. The loss of a life. Here is a person going to volunteer and work at the event and doesn't make it. And it's just a terrible, terrible thing. And I think, well, hopefully the PGA will address that properly. But then shortly that same morning, you had the world number one put into handcuffs and into a holding cell and an orange jumpsuit.
And he handled that with lots of grace and class, uh, way beyond what I would be able to stomach. I find that was an incredibly intrusive and over abusive use of police power. I
Yeah.
really do. I'm sorry to say that.
Well, it's
I love cops.
obvious.
Yeah,
It's obvious it is because you saw interviews for other players and their caddies that came in the exact same route, waved
yeah,
in. They said they didn't even have to roll down their windows or show their credentials. They were waved in. So let's say a couple of dozen or maybe 3 dozen proceeded, maybe a dozen, who it doesn't matter. Prior pros were instructed, as was Scotty. And then at some point in that bottleneck, this all happened, and let's hope. Well, today was supposed to be Scotty's court date, but
yeah.
that got pushed. You know, there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes, and I
You have
love
to
the
wonder
lawyer.
about that particular cop's judgment. I mean, not only did he not know who Scotty Scheffler was or understand the situation, but apparently he thought he was capable of stopping a car by grabbing it.
Yeah, we'll have to
Mm.
put him in our Superman and Batman X episode later on, but
Yeah,
let's move forward a little bit. So, lots of things there, and that was Friday morning. The fact that he was doing his stretches in the jail cell and following what he calls, so both Scotty and Xander are very similar. They have a process, and I
yeah.
think more and more of these guys are getting like that because they get into the process and they're almost like a manufacturing line building automobiles. The process starts and it ends with an automobile. The process starts with stretching and then playing and then picking up the trophy at the end. That's Scotty's process. At the end of his process, he wants to hold a trophy, and he's done pretty well the last 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah. No, you have to give this guy a lot of credit for being able to compartmentalize all the different things that go on in his life separate from golf. And he leads a regular, normal life. He's a family man. He knows what his priorities are. And at the same time, when he walks in those gates, it's like, now I'm going to play some golf, and I'll be back in a few hours to the rest of my life. But like he has often said, golf is what he does, not who he is.
So, good question for you. You had Schauffele shot 62, had a chance for 61. And then Shane Lowry had about a 12-footer for 61, and it just
Man
kind
missed
of
it by like
faded
an
off.
inch. Yeah.
And on a hole that a lot of people were hitting into and trying for eagle, but he had a chance. However, Scotty Scheffler's round on Friday has to be in that mix. What's the best round of golf among those 3 rounds of golf? I have my answer.
I think Scheffler coming back from jail and a traumatic experience. I don't know how many of our listeners, if any, have ever been in handcuffs or in jail, but it can't be fun, and it can't be something that most people can just ignore and put aside. But Scheffler was able to somehow, breathing exercises and all the things he did, come back out and birdie the first hole he played. It's like there was probably some pretty fancy FanDuel side bets going on him that would have been interesting to see.
Yeah, I don't know how many pros would have shown up. Well, I will say this. He got released pretty quickly, and I would say the owner of of Valhalla, the mayor, all first of all, go back. Let's look at the little people like you and I when we have an event at Wingfoot. We volunteer. Those
Yeah.
people are participating in that of their own free will. They're preparing for that years in advance.
Yeah,
You've
they
got
love it.
the bourbon, you've got the racing, you've got all of that, and all that thematic stuff, great stuff, all that positive stuff goes out the window by one little incident. Now, let's move forward because that was Friday morning. I have this picture because I want to show you what I think they're going to remember about the PGA. And it's this guy right here. Schauffele won. But this guy, let's take a look at this particular putt. It's fat. This is the putt he makes on the 18th hole to get to 20 under. Now, let's go back 2 holes. 16th hole. He's just going all out on that driver, and he just does a little flip, and he hits his big old, huge duck hook or hook. It should be 40 yards into those trees. And it pops out mysteriously into the fairway 30 yards the other way. So he's in the middle of the fairway. I think he's 220 yards. Now, I think Chambly said that his irons are two irons stronger than the other pros. But anyway, he takes an 8-iron out, and after he hits it, he gets down in a crouch, and he's going like this, and he knows he's going to 2 feet. Makes the birdie, makes, I guess, par in 17. Now, he's got this putt here on 18. He knows, and everybody said before the tournament, 20 under. You got to get to 20 under. With about 5 or 6, 7, maybe the back 9 left, announcers were saying, "What do you think it's going to be?" And they think you got to get to 19 under is a playoff, 20 under is a win. So here's for 20 under.
Depending on the lie. 18.
Here's Bryson. And the last message from his team before he went to the
And
first
it's
tee
Mystic Bryson coming up the stretch, trying to gain on
Can he keep the speed up?
This for birdie.
Xander Schauffele.
High the lead. Brilliant.
Fantastic.
I got to wonder what Schauffele was thinking if he would have thought if he saw that putt. Does "here we go again" enter his mind? But I got to tell you, this was Mystic Dan trying to close the gap, and it didn't quite get there.
Xander was most likely on the 16th hole because he was 2 groups behind. You had a group between DeChambeau and Schauffele that included, I think, Sahith Theegala. Unfortunately, he had a dislocated or a bruised rib from the week before. He had bad sinus issues, and he had a cold. For him to be in the second to last group is incredible. But I don't think he like a horse that went out fast. He lost his speed somewhere in that 4th round,
But he's got foundation under him for the next race. So this guy's gonna make some noise in his career.
But I bring up DeChambeau because I think he was the show. You don't get much out of Schauffele. The emotion and the showmanship that he had some pretty incredible pars he made out of some bunkers and some 7 or 8 footers.
Love him or hate him, he's always interesting to watch.
So 2 things I heard is the crowd was all behind Bryson. So his persona has changed from not such a nice guy. Guys are using the A word. I'm not going to say that.
No,
I had nothing against him winning 4 years ago at Wingfoot. You
no.
know,
Walk a
uh,
mile in my shoes. You just don't know people. You can't. We're not capable of judging people just because of the way we perceive them on TV. It's we all do it. It's kind of unfair. But I think Bryson showed a lot of class and a lot of grit. He's fun to watch.
he really is fun to watch, and I think he's got to be watched in the Open at Pinehurst. Um, though it's a different kind of place, it's not going to be soggy. Let's hope. This was soggy, so you could hit the ball and you're flying at 325 and it bounces and stops.
Yeah.
So if you hit the ball 325 yards on your intended target, 360 yards on your intended target is the fairway. You're going to be in the fairway.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of unbelievable when you say those numbers to normal human beings like us hitting a golf ball. I'm pleased at 220, 230 at this point in my life.
Right, with anything.
150 yards further.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that I noticed is, and you can go look at the stats. See, they said, look, the math came through here for Schauffele, and we'll talk about him just coming up. But had you implanted or superimposed Schauffele's putting this week at the PGA with if you had taken Xander's putting stats and put him with Bryson probably would have won by 4. He missed a lot of makeable putts. Now everybody does, but
Yeah.
Xander was making those putts.
This week, Xander was making them.
Mm-hmm.
And Xander, I guarantee you, was having internal battles with himself. Oh no, here we go again. I mean, the pressure that he ended up putting on himself based on the week before where Rory lapped him from 5 shots behind or whatever it was, had to be in his mind every time he hit a bad shot, and there weren't many of them. But as he said in his interviews, he had to just, grit his teeth and bear it and get through it, and he did it.
All right, well, let's take us through the 18th hole, which was not a layup. So we know there's water right, and DeChambeau hit it left. He hit it into the bunker where you're going to see Xander is nearby. Had this terrible situation, and he did the best he could. DeChambeau did. So he chipped it on in 3 and made that, whatever that was around. Oh, it was 10 feet 9 inches. Because Victor Hovland, we haven't even talked about Victor Hovland. He's the show all the way up until he has to putt the 10-footer to go from 19 under to 20 under. Okay, so we talked about Victor Hovland just a bit. He was so off on his game the week before, he didn't think he was going to play. He thought he was going to pull out.
Yep.
His coach.
That might have been a mistake.
What did Billy Harmon say? And I think Curtis Strange, who was on part of the ESPN telecast, Curtis Strange said this. He says, these pros are one swing thought away from shooting 65. We heard that from Billy Harmon, who attributes that to his brother, one of his brothers. But that's what happened with Victor Hovland. And Victor Hovland had strings of birdies. He was ahead of DeChambeau going into 16. He was 19, DeChambeau was 18. They got to 19. They got it out 17th hole. And the 18th hole, you saw DeChambeau make the 10-foot, 9-inch putt, because they said that. That's why we knew he was away. And Victor had a 10-foot putt, which he missed by miles. It broke off to the left by about a half a foot, and he missed that.
Yeah, he's probably kicking himself still, but at least he probably woke up, some of the old spirit in himself. So he'll probably progress.
Well,
going forward.
The foundation, as you say, he's got the foundation to go into the U.S. Open in 3 or 4 weeks from now and compete and be maybe wire to wire for himself. Well, let's look at Xander playing the 18th hole. So first off the tee, here he is. Look at this lie.
Oh, yeah, hit a 4-iron or a Louisville slugger.
And he said he was worried that from that lie, I hate to say this word even when I'm not playing golf, shanking it with the water on
the ball, though. Look at where the ball is positioned. It's unusually out by the toe. Okay?
Yeah.
And it might just be the lie of the club, but there's no way the hosel of this club is going to be anywhere near this ball, because if not, it's going right there in the bad stuff over there in the right.
Yeah.
And oh, here we go again. He makes a 6 and loses by 1 to DeChambeau, which is possible. So let's see what he does here, which I think this may have been the shot of the whole tournament.
Let's watch the legs here. He's going to need some leg stability. Make sure you get a good strike. Aiming way right to account for the lie.
Well, he caught a lot of it.
I thought he hit the green at this point.
Oh, that's a wonderful shot.
So you have to take choke out of the vocabulary, because if anyone was ever going to choke, that would have been the place to do it.
No question. Or Billy, here we are, the chip shot. A million times out of a million times, you're using one club, and it's not the 60 degree, right?
No, it's the 90 degree.
You're hitting the putter here, and you'll get it. You'll get it inside of 10 feet from here. It's pretty straightforward. Look, you see the yellow flag in the distance. It's going to be left or right. But here, let's take a look at what he does. And this is the same kind of chipping motion you see a lot of these guys. Scheffler has this. Spieth has this, where they hit it, check it.
Yeah, you just do not want to hit behind this ball.
No. Pretty good. To win it all.
So that was a lip in.
Yeah.
And how many times has he lipped out in the last 4 or 5 years? He's second, so many big tournaments, and he finally got the lip in.
Suppose that was going a little faster and did the old horseshoe right back at him. God, thank God it didn't do that. Who knows what would become of Xander Schauffele if that thing lipped out, especially if he lost in a playoff.
Well, the guys that do the No Laying Up podcasts are big into numbers. Greens, strokes gained on driving, strokes gained, greens, and all these other numbers. And his numbers are so good. And we criticize his putting. His putting is actually top 5 or 6 in the world over a period of time. So what we only see is those 10-footers he doesn't make in the, let's say, at Augusta or at the US.
I don't know if they broke out his putting stats Sundays alone versus the other days, but I would think until this week anyway, his stats were better Friday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday than Sundays in most cases.
His putting speed was perfect.
Yeah, all day.
When you're 40 feet and it peels off to the right and you miss it low, it's okay because you got a 10-incher left. Or you hit it, high side and it's just there and it's just past 6 or 8. That's, not inside a garbage pail, 2.5, 3 foot circle. That's inside, like a 14-inch circle. That's incredible. From 60, from 50, from 40 and 20, of course.
Yeah,
a lot of
all week. All week.
And how many fairways did he miss? He missed that one fairway, the second hole, and he managed to get it out. But the one time
he recovered very well from all his mistakes. And when he bogeyed, he came back and birdied the next 2 holes on Sunday, right? So he adjusted and
very well.
Yeah.
And
he confirmed his own self-confidence. He did what he had to do. He took the shots and then recovered when he had to. He won.
Wire to wire. Can you imagine how many majors can someone say they've led wire to wire?
Nope. Not usual.
Seattle
Slew.
Say again?
Seattle Slew could do it.
Seattle Slew lead all three legs of the Triple Crown wire to wire?
If I remember correctly, yes. That horse was a front runner, speed horse from the get-go. And I think pretty much every race he ran, he ran on the front. There was a horse named Ruffian years ago, God bless her. She was never headed. in all her races until the one she fell in, there was never any horse ever in front of her, ever, from when the gate opened to the finish line. No horse was ever in front of her.
Wow.
There's a book about her. She was an awesome horse in a real tragic event in horse racing years ago when she fell in a match race with, I think it was Foolish Pleasure, who was another great horse, male. So that was tragic. But
What was the name of this horse again?
Ruffian, Ruffian.
That might be
So
worth looking into.
whenever I hear Wire to Wire, it's impossible for me not to remember her.
And then your other horse was never wire to wire, Zenyatta, who always was from the back.
Yeah, the first time she was in front was at the wire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. This has been great. We had a wonderful week. Let's think of the positives about Xander winning, and the math worked for him. He is the best golfer right now going on to challenge Scotty Scheffler. The big question mark, and I think we'll see right away this week, is Scheffler going to get back to his form that happened before the PGA? Or is this speed bump? Is this speed bump, that orange jersey that he had to put on Friday morning, is that going to interfere with his continued dominance? We'll have to see.
Even Xander acknowledged that, Scheffler's the man. They're still chasing him. He said, this is a big win for me, but I'm still not Scotty Scheffler.
It's always good to put a little more butter on the other guy's toast too. So yeah. I think he's happy to go back under the radar. Let Scotty take all the number one questions, and maybe he'll do just as well at the Open. He hit the ball straight.
He always hits the ball straight. You cannot count him out. He just the only thing that would have worried me about him was the Sunday, holding off any closers on him, and he did that this time after failing to do it the week before, and that was a big story, when McIlroy caught him and passed him. McIlroy played lights out that day, so it wasn't that Schauffele played that bad, but this was very, very important to him as far as further wins in his career. Again, I'm not that sympathetic if he comes in second. The poor guy's making, millions and millions and millions of dollars playing golf. So you want them to win for the winning's sake, but you don't have to take up a GoFundMe page for him if he loses.
So like in the movie Trading Places, Mortimer, I'm going to give you a bet for $1. I'm going to give you the best bet you're ever going to hear today, and maybe the rest of the year. I'm going to give you McIlroy and Scheffler, and I will take Xander and DeChambeau in the U.S. Open for $1. You up for that bet?
I'll take it.
All right, that's a wrap.
All right, man.
All right, my Maryland, here we go. We're going to the Belmont in a couple of weeks. Take it easy.
Yeah, New York coming up.
Why are you laughing?
Well, at least we have the laugh to add at the end. That's what happened. Somebody changed my grip, and the next thing you know, I can't do the podcast anymore. I felt like I was in the first row of the first pew at church right during the sermon.
And your brother was poking you.
My brother was making me laugh.